Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. I'd like to welcome you, dear viewers, to our series In the Light of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah's peace and blessings be on each and every one of you. In this segment of our program, we'll be looking at some letters, as I mentioned in the previous program, concerning banks, and also questions concerning prayer and dress in prayer. And we also have, a question concerning the principle of an eye for an eye. We'll begin with our first question, which is from Yusuf Ansari Dul, who writes from Dubai. Dear Dr. Bilal, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Your program is very interesting. I try to follow it every chance I get. I have a few questions that I would like to ask. The first is, my neighbor is a bank clerk. Can I accept invitations at his home for meals? This addresses the issue of knowing that the source of one's food or gifts are from haram sources. Is a Muslim allowed to accept this? For example, if you know that your neighbor is a drug dealer and he gives you a gift, you know he's a drug dealer. He's dealing with his illegal operations. His money is haram. His wealth is haram. Can you accept gifts from such a person? No. From an Islamic perspective, no. And what has happened in the case of interest, because interest has lost its seriousness in the minds of people, then the idea that a person, for example, as he said, is a bank clerk, this man works in a bank, right? Meaning that his earnings, his income is all haram, because working in a bank, meaning that your employer, you're working in an organization which is based on interest, which from an Islamic perspective is haram. So it means your earnings are all haram. So you know this person, this is the source of his earnings. He's now buying food with those earnings. You see, that food becomes haram because the money with which he bought it was haram. Though the food in and of itself, as it was in the store, was not haram, when he purchased it with haram money, then it became haram. For you as a practicing Muslim, for you to partake of it would need to partake of haram. The scholars have said that the only occasion where it would be permissible for you to do so is if this is an opportunity for you to give this person some advice. But for you just to be neighborly, well, I'm just going to come over and, eat of your food, this is not acceptable Islamically. Unless you're giving the person some advice. Listen, brother, you need to get out of the bank. This is haram. Actually, your food is haram here. So to try to advise them, to protect themselves and their family, from this evil that they're involved in. So otherwise, one shouldn't accept such invitations. The second question, which Mr. Ansari writes, Sheikh Al-Albani has said, as I've been told, that praying bareheaded is makruh for a man. Is this a fact? Well, Sheikh Al-Albani is, Sheikh Nasruddin Al-Albani is a leading scholar originally from Albania, who grew up and studied in Syria, and who presently resides in Jordan. Is one of the leading scholars of hadith of our era. It has been said, and I have heard reference to this, that he holds that it is makruh or disliked for a man to pray bareheaded, on the basis that the Prophet, may God's peace and blessing upon him, in all of the recorded narrations describing him, describe him as praying and functioning in the society with his head covered. but specifically praying, that he would pray with his head covered. There is a narration that he took off his turban and placed it as a barrier to indicate where he was praying, but this narration is not authentic. So what we have is that all of the record seems to show that he always prayed with his head covered. And since he did say, "Pray as you saw me pray," then this would include also the way in which he prayed, how he kept himself in terms of covering himself, etc., etc. So on the basis of that, Sheikh Nasir concluded that it is makruh for a person to pray with their head uncovered. But, even makruh, when it says makruh, it means that were we to cover our heads, it would be more rewarding. One would gain a reward from doing so because we're following the way of the Prophet in that regard. And to not do so, there is no sin, because it is not actually a religious requirement, meaning that we do not have to have our heads covered for prayers to be acceptable. So it's looked at as something only preferable. So on that basis, this is the argument that is held. The majority of scholars don't hold this, although the Hanafi school of Islamic law, do hold it as a requirement for men to cover their head, along with other requirements. But the other schools, Shafi'i, Maliki, and Hanbali, don't hold that this is a requirement or that it is in fact makruh not to do so. The next question that we have is a question from Sayyid Yunus, who is in Dubai. Sayyid Yunus writes, if an eye for an eye is a principle in Islam, or he says, dear Dr. Bilal Phillips, Assalamu alaikum, first, but the actual question he's writing is, if an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth is allowed in Islam, is it allowed for a person to deceive someone who deceived them? Well, no. Simply no. An eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. This is not applicable across the board, meaning that whatever is done to you, you may do back to others. Because the eye for the eye, tooth for the tooth, this is for physical damage which has come to you personally, that Islamic law will allow that similar damage to go to the other person, or that the person pays some kind of fine, for having harmed you. So if they knocked out your eye, they may pay a certain amount of money, for having knocked out your eye as a fine. Or you may have their eye knocked out also. That is a part of the eye for the eye law. But if, for example, the harm goes beyond you, for example, somebody killed your wife, can you go and kill their wife? No, this is, though it seems to be matching, they killed your wife and you suffered from the loss of your wife, so you will kill their wife so they can suffer from the loss of their wife. People do this, in the world, but this is not from Islam. Islam does not condone this at all. It's forbidden. If a person killed your wife, then that person is to be killed. This is not how the law functions. If a person deceived you, in other words, they contracted some kind of illegitimate business deal, then they should be punished legally for that. Not that we do what they did. What they've done is they deceived us, which is something evil, something bad. So we are going to do something equivalently bad. No. This doesn't balance. In Islam, this is not considered to be a part and parcel of the eye for the eye, tooth for the tooth rule. The second question which Sayyid Yunus asks is, some Muslims ask me, an Indian Muslim, to support Pakistan against India while playing cricket for the reason that the former is an Islamic country. I feel it is not, but even if it is this view correct? Well, cricket is a sport. For one to be, supporting over nationalistic reasons is not from Islam anyway. You know, if the Indian team is playing, for us to be cheering this team simply because we're Indian and they're Indians, no. I mean, you may be curious as to how the Indian team is going to fare because you're from India, but to become, you know, this rallying supporter, this type of thing, no. I remember reading in the newspaper of a father, and this was a Muslim father in Pakistan, who killed his son because Pakistan and India were playing some cricket game, and the son didn't support Pakistan. This is nonsense. This is total nonsense. You know, this is nationalism at its worst. To say, well, no, we should support Pakistan simply because Pakistan is an Islamic country. Well, you know, as Sayyid Yunus suggests, you know, Pakistan has some Islam there, but to say it is an Islamic country is I think, stretching the meaning of Islamic country quite a bit. There is Islam there, Islam is being practiced, there's efforts to improve Islam there, but to say it's Islamic country, meaning that what is happening in Pakistan, you know, across the board with few exceptions is Islamic? No, we know not. You know, the leader of Pakistan and others in different Islamic movements there are all trying to make changes to improve the quality of Islam within the country. So to say one should just cheer for Pakistan simply because it's Islamic, no, this is not a basis either. I mean, one is watching sports, one can enjoy the game without becoming, you know, a partisan party supporter, you know, wearing the colors, you know, the banners, and, you know, becoming all hyped up